Hello everybody, my name is Davey Hill and I'm going to show you a little bit about strings and variable length string inputs in C. In C, strings don't exist like they do in other higher level programming languages like Java. Rather than how they're typically represented, they're represented as an array of character type elements with a given pointer representing the address of the first character in the string. C strings are terminated with the numerical value 0, and it's important to remember that the numerical value 0 is not the equivalent of the digit 0. Alright, and I took the liberty of going ahead and, for the sake of time, whipping up a little program to demonstrate strings. The first string is saved in typical format of pointer addressing the string, and the second is saved in more of an array format. And this is just meant to show that both can be used in the same exact way. They're not necessarily different structurally in any way. So we'll hop on our terminal and we'll go to compile our file and we'll run it, and this shows that the strings are treated exactly the same. So we'll go on a little more advanced route, and here we're going to do how to do input from the user when you're using strings. And in this first example, we're going to assume that there's a maximum string length. Include our standard input-output library header. Create our int main. We don't need arguments because this is a very simple program. We'll go with a length name, say 10 for now. That's just an arbitrary decision. It could be anything you'd like it to be, or that you know the value is going to be. And then we're going to tell the string to fill itself with all null characters to begin with. And that's so in case we get a smaller string, it'll know when to terminate even if it's not 10 characters. So we'll prompt the user for their name, and we'll let them know there's a maximum length of 10 characters. Here we're going to use the fgets method, and this will take where we would like to store the word. We're going to store it in name, the length it can be, 10, and where we're getting it from, which will be standard input-output. And just to make sure the function actually executed properly, we'll contain a little line right here to output the name to make sure it actually captured it correctly. And we're going to return a 1 just so the compiler doesn't give us a hard time. Here we go. We're going to save it. I already have a file names 2, so we'll replace it. Alright, and then we'll hop onto the terminal. And at the terminal, we'll compile our new program. And we will run it. And this program is going to show us a couple of the little problems we have when we want to use variable length strings to take user input. So I'm just going to enter my name. It works correctly. But say we wanted a name that was longer than 10 characters. For instance, let's say my name was Davey Smithenstein. The function we have is only going to capture the first 10 characters. Well, the first 9 because it needs 1 for the termination. But that's one of the problems with having a set maximum length of your string. You may want strings that are longer than that. So I'm going to show you how to write a simple program that can take user input of variable length. This will start out just like our other program. We're going to have to include the standard input-output library functions. we're also going to need to include our standard library. This is different from the input-output. And it's important to note that while C does have built-in string methods, it pays to know exactly how they're implemented. So we'll start off, our function is going to be int main, and it'll be similar to before. Except here we're going to initialize the name to null. Prompt the user once again. Name will set to our function we will write getName. And the output statement to make sure it worked correctly. And in C, we are going to have to put our function that we use. We have to declare it before we use it. So this is going to return a string. And we're going to need some variables. The first variable is where we're going to end up storing the name, the finished name. The second is a temporary variable to hold certain subparts of the name, because we're only going to be able to get a certain amount of input from the user at a time and then slowly build the name until we have it the correct length. So we'll need a size to keep track of the size of the variable we're working on, an index to keep where we're at in the overall name. And declare a variable chunk, which will just represent a small piece that's added. And a character value set to end of file just by default. Here we're going to need a loop that processes characters. And this will continue until character is null or end of file. Say the character equals get C from standard in. Alright, and here we'll set our sentinel value to check if we've reached the end of the file or the user has entered a new line, because we'll just arbitrarily say that specifies a new name. Alright, and while the size is less than or equal to the index, that is the size of our temporary string, actually I mean that the size is the length of our overall string, and the index is pointing where we're at in that string so far. So if the size is less than or equal to the index, we're going to need more space. So we say size is going to be what it is plus our chunk, whatever that value is. We decided it would be 10, add an extra 10 characters. Then we're going to have to reallocate memory for the string name, and we'll tell it to reallocate memory of size. Here, after we do that, we'll test whether the actual reallocation was successful. If it wasn't, we'll free the space that was used, set name equal to null, and break from the loop. And otherwise, name is going to equal temp. Then we exit out of this if statement, and this will be what occurs when the size is greater than the index. We'll increment the index as we use it and say that that spot is equal to char. Finally, we return the overall name variable. Alright, so we save our new file. We'll call it names.c, put in examples, and we'll head over to our terminal window to test it out. Compiled correctly, which is always a good sign. And let's enter my name. As you can see, it works correctly. Can enter an arbitrarily long name, and it still works.